Well, hell. Welcome to my Dungeon Mastering Tyranny of Dragons series, where I go over key moments in every session from a Dungeon Master's perspective. You'll get to see some of my tricks, some of my successes, and all of my mistakes. In this video, we'll be covering Session 1, specifically introducing the player characters to each other, and the players to the campaign. It is currently later on in the day. The sun is beginning to set in the west on the Sword Coast. Out in that direction, where the sun is beginning to settle down for its everyday rest, there are forests, people living amongst those forests, going about their daily lives. But we as an audience, our vision begins to settle on a single tavern in the town of Green Nest. Tavern has a little sculpture sign of a dragon with its head cut off. And before the body is a plate with a single dragon steak on it. There's like, for even more style, there's a fork pushed through the dragon steak. All of you sit around a table inside the Dragon Steak Tavern. Whether you're all sitting together or separately, that's up to you. But what all of you notice is a very boisterous half-elven man. One of you would already know him as Leosin, as he is raucously recounting a tale of his travels on the road. For those of you who live here in Green Nest, this has been kind of common over the last 3 days that Leosin has been here, as he and his caravan are resting up from their long travels, heading north. What would y'all like to do, as Leosin is finishing up his latest tale? And just like that, I've come up to my first screw-up. This introduction of the scene, the setup of the scene, is not my best. I'll be honest, just not my best. I have been coming off of a hiatus from TTRPGs in general. I've just been doing a lot of video games in my free time. So I was rusty. Real rusty. You know, it's rusty. But I get over it. I get through it. I don't make a big deal about it. But I acknowledge it, and we're going to do better. We're going to move on. If I had more time, because I should have prepared, because I knew I was rusty. But if I had given it more time before I opened my mouth, I would have had something like this instead. It is currently later on in the day. The sun is beginning to set in the west, dipping below the trees where the people of the roadside town live, work, and play. As an audience, our vision settles on a small tavern. Its sign is a carving of a beheaded dragon and a steak of its flesh, skewered with a fork next to a frothy mug. The Dragon Steak Tavern is filled with the boisterous and booming voice of a half-elf man some of you already know as Leosin. Now, as flawed as my original introduction to the scene was, it still did some things that were okay. It still did what it had to do. It set up the scene, and it gave my players what they needed to begin to roleplay together. And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. 3 things that it did really well is it gave good macro details, meso details, and good micro details. So these are 3 categories of details that you can use for pretty much setting up any scene, but I'm going to talk about them specifically in this first setup here. So macro details: time of day, general location. So in the original setup that I had, I did talk about the time of day and the general location. The meso details, or meso details, were the description of the current location's container, the Dragon Steak Tavern. I described the sign, and also that it was kind of small. And finally, the micro details. These are important details that are in your player's immediate surroundings. So, I described that there were tables, it's a tavern, how much of the party is in the space. I said that they were all seated at a table, but if they were split up, that's fine. But these were all details in their immediate vicinity that they would need to know. All right, and try your best not to go past 3 details in each category. Again, that's a macro detail, a meso detail, and a micro detail. So try not to go over 3 because, then you'll start getting into like a 5-minute monologue. And as entertaining as those can be, I'm sure your players would be much more interested in getting back to the roleplay. Next up, I'm handing over the spotlight to the players, and each of them are going to describe their characters, but I don't necessarily just give them a carte blanche to do whatever they want for describing their character. It's kind of implied that they have like a narrow window, and I make that framework obvious, and then I reinforce that framework throughout the scene, and you'll kind of see what I mean as we continue. So keep in mind, if you want to hear their introductions without me talking over them or without my commentary, I have a separate video of just their character introductions down in the description below, and probably also at the end of this video in the end cards. So yeah, keep an eye out for that if that's what you're interested in. One of you would already know him as Leosin, as he is raucously recounting a tale of his travels on the road. For those of you who live here in Green Nest, this has been kind of common over the last 3 days that Leosin has been here, as he and his caravan are resting up from their long travels, heading north. What would y'all like to do as Leosin is finishing up his latest tale?
Gia would be sitting down next to the bar. She would be half-mindedly paying attention to the stories. She spent the first 2 days ago already listening to lots of them, and by this point, she would feel a bit of a burden to just stick out there and listen. But even so, the curiosity does get the better of her a little. While she hears it, the woman, Kyo, she's wearing a simple but still very effective set of scale armor, one that a hunter would be more prone to use. She has her trusty axe, a wood-covered one, sitting by sheathed next to her waist. And, as usual, she has her companion in the tavern a bit close to her. She'll look towards the woman nearby and say, "Hey, Naomi, what do you think of that guy? Do you really think of the stories he tells are true? Seems kinda odd to spend so long here if you're going to go north after all."
Always found him a little bit too boisterous. Never shuts up. Until he does. And then it gets noisy in the tavern again. It's just everyone either talks over him or listens to him for far too long. A terrible waste of time.
It's not really that much of a waste. The stories are fun. Can't really be against it, but just 3 days, that's too long for a caravan to stay. I don't know. You know what? That's it. I'm going to ask it. Are you going to come with me to ask him?
As you summon up the courage to perhaps approach this boisterous half-elven man, seated not too far away is a armored individual. Miss Ames, would you like to describe your character? The Kio's player tries to immediately pass the baton off to Naomi's player, but I wasn't keen on allowing that. I thought that was a little too predictable, so I instantly took the spotlight and whirled it around on Nymeria's player instead. And that's definitely something that I like to do, is I like to flesh out a room from the outside in. And so you have these opposite corners, you're kind of ping-ponging the spotlight around. Now, I will say that I did this in a way that wasn't too obtrusive, and I appreciate that Kia's player was down to allow this, and also Naomi's player was down to allow this as well. And I do reward that by giving the spotlight right back as soon as Nymeria is done introducing herself.
You're going to come with me to ask him?
As you summon up the courage to perhaps approach this boisterous half-elven man, seated not too far away is a armored individual. Miss Ames, would you like to describe your character?
Sure, she's kind of seated. She may have a leg propped up on a empty chair, not quite looking for company, but looking around. She's got a tankard of something good in her hand, and she's listening to the conversation around her, noting this woman's opinions about Leosin's storytelling, and truly not disagreeing with her. Leosin does boast, but it is fun to listen when all you have is quiet. What you guys see is a half-elven cleric. She's in plate armor. There's a beautiful lotus symbol edged around the armor, and she's got a long, thick braid down her back.
Very cool. Eric,
Yeah.
would you like to describe your character as you are a, whether willing or unwilling audience member to Leosin's tale?
Dravna would be half listening. More or less, though, he's trying to flag down one of the bartenders to refill his mug. Currently, he's resting up against the bar right now with his elbow on the table, and he's just kind of like looking around, trying to see if there's someone to get his attention. And despite his demeanor, he has a very rugged appearance, poorly shaven beard. His hair is all rustled up and kept very unkeptly in a ponytail that's held together by like just it appears to be like rubber bands or like grass trying to like tighten it together. He's wearing scale mail, but it's very rugged. There's many dings and dents, slash marks in it. There's a little bit of dried dirt on it, and his robes that are underneath the armor is kind of dragging against the ground. It has hues of both black and white, with like golden embroidery kind of crisscrossing around the borders. He also has a shield attached to his back, and hoisted on his hip is a longsword. And just like the equipment that he's wearing, it appears to be very dull, very beginner-ish. This guy has the appearance of a mercenary, but he's kind of all by himself, kind of off in the corner, just looking around, just flagging to get attention for a beer to hit him.
Naomi,
Hold on for a moment.
sorry, go ahead.
Hold on, Kyo. I'm going to handle this, and then I suppose I'll accompany you to listen to the blowhard.
As Naomi walks towards Dravna to fulfill his order, what do you do, Kyo?
Yeah, she was about to get ready, but then she notices the armored one, and she vaguely remembers that both that person appeared as well as the boisterous one. It's a small town, so whenever new people appear, it's very easy to know. People talk after all. So knowing this, Kyo sets her mind instead for the cleric and approaches her with a big smile. Oh, hello there! You are one of the ones that came alongside the half-elf, right? Pleasure to meet you. I'm Kyo Roach, one of the local farmers. She says, doing a small bow. Her amber eyes focus on the woman.
Nymeria kind of sits up. She takes her foot down from the chair and looks at Kyo and smiles and says, "Hi, Kyo. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yes, I did travel to your town with Leosin and his caravan. My name is
Nemeria's a bit big. It's okay if you don't want that, though.
Nymeria is fine.
As you wish. But, Nymeria, how long are you going to stay here in Green Nest? Did something happen? It has been 3 days, and as much as I love my town, it's kind of the middle of nowhere. Is there a problem with your caravan? I may not really look like it, but I'm a mighty fine carpenter, if I say so myself. If there's a problem with the wagon or something, I can fix it. Though I wouldn't even really ask for any payment, to be honest.
Well, that's kind of you to offer. We're just stopping through. It's been a long journey. We are gonna be moving up north, but once Leosin gets a good audience, it's sometimes hard to pull him away and get him back on track.
As you do, you notice that Naomi is talking to Dravna. How do you approach Dravna, Naomi?
Let's see. She makes a bit of a big show of it as she approaches. Hi. One moment. She looks around, just checking if there's anyone else, and then she kind of focuses in on him, eyeing his unkempt state. As she gets to the table, you can see the probably the most red human you've ever seen, aside from the skin. Her eyes are red, her hair is red, and she is wearing red robes with a black sash around the waist.
You're a human, right?
Yep.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, screw up number 2. And we're not even like 10 minutes into this session. Is I interrupted Naomi's player because I was not listening correctly. They had said that they were a human, and I thought I had to reinforce that fact because I didn't hear them actually say that Naomi was human, and that's on me. I honestly would not have known that I did that if I wasn't rewatching the session. I mean, that's kind of the benefit of recording your sessions and watching them over, so you can catch things like that. So I'm going to make sure I do a better job of listening to players with more intent going forward, for sure. So learn from my mistakes.
He looks at you, eye to eye. His face is very stoic and neutral. He'll just give you a nod, and he extends out his hand on the table as he's holding his glass, and he just mutters, "I'd like a refill."
Of course. Just one moment, please. The way she moves is very swift and kind of dainty. She very gently grasps the mug and makes a show of it. She spins on the tips of her toes and almost kind of prances to the bar itself. She then kind of lifts herself over, fills in, hops back over, mug it's still in hand. She hops back over with one hand, and then you hear the stomp, the clonk of wood on wood, as you see her footwear. Planks of wood with 2 rectangular planks on the front and in the back of the shoes, if they could be called that. Steps forward, gently places the drink on the table.
As the mug hits the table, I need everyone to make a perception check, please.
Oh, I got +2 on these. I'm so good. Here we go. You guys are gonna see some sick, nasty rolls. Watch this.
For now, I'll just tell you what I roll. A2.
A2.
It says on part of the campaign, does anyone see my rolls?
So just to review, on your character sheet in D&D Beyond, when you hover over perception check, you should see a button that looks like the DDD dice logo.
I didn't have the time to install it yet.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's the issue then, is you don't have the extension. It's very simple to do, though. Anyway,
Okay.
with a 2, let's see, we have a 13, a 14, and a 13. You don't notice anything out of the ordinary. You just are overwhelmed with the sound of Leosin's raucous laughter and the small crowd he's gathered. He's standing on top of a couple of tables pushed together, so it's like a miniature stage. And all eyes are currently on him, and you guys can't help but kind of be distracted even in the middle of your conversations. Go ahead and continue. Continue on.
Okay. Dravda's movements with his arm to go grab the mug, it's very mechanical, as if he's paying very close attention to how his body's moving. Very precise, very planned out and detailed. As he grabs the mug, he looks at you and he grunts, but it's a humorous grunt. It's like a He appreciated your gracious, serene movements, and he just says, many thanks. I enjoyed the sight. And he just nods and-
Drabna's a man of culture, confirmed.
Man of culture, man of culture.
He gives a small nod and just brings the mug up to his mouth and starts drinking again, looking away back towards the half-elf that's boisterously yelling, at least from his point of view.
As this time here goes on, you can hear Leosin kind of belt out in a humorous bellow. And then I tell you, that goblin just damn exploded into a million bits. It was amazing. And he stopped short, and you see his ears kind of turn to the side in a strange fashion. As you all hear. And then you hear. And the bards in the corner stop short, as you all now hear screaming and running going on outside the tavern. What do you do?